And very pleased to have in the studio, right next to me, Thomas Frank. He's the journalist and best-selling author of Pity the Billionaire, The Wrecking Crew, What's the Matter with Kansas, a former columnist with the Wall Street Journal and Harper's, founding editor of The Baffler, regular contributor to Salon. And his latest book is an absolutely brilliant book. It's called Listen, Liberal, or Whatever Happened to the Party of the People. And the website for that book is listenliberal.com. And, yeah, Thomas, welcome.
It's great to be here.
It's great to have you with us. And so, Listen Liberal, what do you want us to listen about?
I think listen's... Sorry, I didn't understand for a second, though. You're referring to yourself. And it's me, too, of course. Yeah. I wrote it for my people. I want them to understand that, liberalism, so much of the appeal of it is this idea that we're better people than others, that we're more moral people. And I want to take that away. And the way I do that is by examining the record of the last couple of Democratic administrations on a certain set of issues, mainly having to do with the economy. And basically the conclusion that I arrive at is that our modern breed of liberals aren't what we think they are. That they're, they pretend to care very deeply about inequality and the fate of the poor, but in point of fact, they really don't care all that much about working people. The broader point is, the liberalism that we live with today is a liberalism of the rich. It's not the liberalism that we grew up with. It's not the, liberalism of the United Auto Workers or something like that. It's, it's a very different species.
One of the points you made in your book was that, and this is an absolutely mind-boggling, brilliant piece of investigative reporting, as well as
investigative history, Tom.
As well as op-ed. You're offering opinions, but mostly it's here are the facts, make up your own damn mind. But you point out that while the Republican Party is, and arguably has been since the 1880s, the party of the 1%, with the a little blip of Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft, the Democratic Party, at least in its modern incarnations, post-1932, let's say, the Democratic Party had been the party of the bottom 99%.
That was the idea, yeah.
But in some ways, and I would attribute this to Al Fromm and the DLC in the late 80s, when Reagan was so successful in destroying the union movement that the Democrats, they were running out of money. We can't get money from the unions anymore, so where can we get money? Let's go to the banksters. And that the Democratic Party kind of gradually, or maybe even rapidly, in the 90s and even to this day, has become more of the party of the top 10% than the
That's exactly right. Wait just a second here. I'm going to cough. That's exactly right. I wouldn't pin it all on Al Fromm, though, in the Democratic Leadership Council. There were a bunch of different actors in this in this saga, and one thing that we need to understand before we go into it, though, is that the Democrats don't need the money. If there's one thing that we can learn from the Bernie Sanders phenomenon, is that you don't have to match Republicans, or in his case, Hillary Clinton, dollar for dollar in order to defeat them. If you look back to the glory days of the Democrats, to the Franklin Roosevelt administration, here's a guy that was routinely outspent in these enormous, margins by the Republicans, and still managed to beat them 4 times. And this continually happened. But in the late 80s, as you said, the Democrats convinced themselves that they had to start being competitive with the Republicans, not only in votes and that sort of thing, but in money. They decided that, and basically everything else follows from that. But the story is also a little more complicated. Even before the 80s, the Democratic Party had decided, as a unit, as a party, they had decided that they really weren't all that interested in working class people anymore. There's a new apple of their eye, a new group that they were really crazy about, and this was, as you said, the upper 10%, the professional class. and their
Going
courtship
from blue collar to white collar, because
exactly.
Yeah, I'm sorry, pardon me.
No, that's fine. But their courtship of this group began in the early 70s or the late 60s, depending on how you look at it, and heated up all through the 70s. And basically, they've never looked back. Now, this is a lot of people have looked at this history and they say, but that's not a winning strategy. We know the Republicans are courting this tiny, are the party of this, are basically the the personal sidearm of the very rich. Bang, that's the Republican Party. Yeah. But why would the Democrats do the same thing? Why would they just choose this different group of the rich? Because obviously the numbers are somewhere else. I mean, working people is an enormous percentage of the population, much greater than the 1% or the 10% or anything else. Right. And why would they do that? It's a fascinating game.
So why?
Well, because they can get away with it.
You also talk about in your book this love of complexity, this love, and this kind of came along with the computer era and whatnot. Although you're right, this did in some ways started back in the 60s. I saw the last 2 years of the Carter administration as the beginning of kind of the end when he deregulated travel and deregulated all these other things. Louise and I started a travel agency in 1983, in part, and made good money. I mean, built it up, sold it off in 1986, and retired, moved to Europe. Because
you did that?
I did, yeah. Louise and I did. Because and that travel agency then went on to it had only done $6 million. It was doing $6 million when we sold it. It has done over $250 million since then. I never have sold it. Right? but the point was that it was deregulation that allowed us to do that, but in the years since, it has put all these small, like we had started travel agencies out of business. Our travel agency got bought out by $1 billion corporation about a decade ago. Mm-hmm. And so it's like there was this change that happened.
Yeah, yes. And the love of complexity is something. So what I found in Listen Liberal is, so I had this hypothesis about the professional class all along. I wrote about it in What's the Matter with Kansas. Yeah. It sounds like we're going to commercial.
We are. Yeah. That's the 20-second warning there. So we'll continue this conversation. We got news here at the bottom of the hour, about 5 minutes. I know you ran from the subway here. I was talking about the fate of the
oh my God.
metro.
We can talk about that the whole hour. It drives me crazy.
We will continue right after this. Stick around. It's 28 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Thomas Frank in the studio with me, the journalist and best-selling author of a variety of books, from Pity the Billionaire to The Wrecking Crew to What's the Matter with Kansas. And his latest is Listen Liberal, or Whatever Happened to the Party of the People. And the website for that is listenliberal.com. And Thomas, we were talking about the Democratic Party, and I think this is a really important conversation to be having right now. In part, I spent the first hour, and I know you couldn't hear it because you were on the Red Line Underground.
And then running through the streets of the District of Columbia.
Right. We are on the air over the air on 2 different stations here in Washington D.C. But it's and not to mention Sirius XM and whatnot. But the first hour, I was like, what are democratic values? And I was playing all these clips from FDR. I had some from Harry Truman I never got to. I had LBJ, John Kennedy, and they were very, very clear about the values of the Democratic Party, and that the Democratic Party was the party of the working people in this country. You said the modern Democratic Party doesn't seem so interested in working people.
That's not their main constituency.
But that sounds really cold. And I know a bunch of people in the Democratic Party who actually do
right.
care.
No, that's right. There is exceptions to what I'm saying. Yes, absolutely. I don't want to say that they're all equally bad. There's plenty of exceptions to everything that I have said and everything that I'm going to say. Lots of them. Look at Elizabeth Warren. I think she's great.
The entire Progressive Caucus in the House of Representatives.
That's right.
It's the second largest.
Keith Ellison, a great man.
DC.
Look, there's plenty of really good Democrats out there, but the leadership faction, the sort of Clinton faction, is the ones who are rallying behind Hillary Clinton right now. And of course, there's more. It's more to it than just the Clinton family or anything like that. It's a broader political persuasion. I think they fit the description that I'm about to give, which is that it's not just that they are themselves professionals and graduates of prestigious schools, and it's not just that they look to professionals as their number one constituency, the ones that they listen to. It's that professionalism inundates the culture of the modern Democratic Party, the kind of Democrats that I'm talking about. It is everywhere in the way they think about the world, the way they talk. You mentioned before we went to break their love of complexity. Right. This is something that I really puzzled with when I was writing Listen Liberal, because as I was starting to say, I've had this sort of hypothesis about the Democrats and the professional class for a long time. The Democrats themselves talk about it all the time. You can't avoid it, you know. But once you put the pieces together, you see that this explains it explains a lot of things about the Democratic Party and Democratic policymaking that you would ordinarily never think of.
For example,
Barack Obama, you know, our president right now, and his two great, well, he had three great achievements as president: the stimulus, Dodd-Frank, and Obamacare. If we put the stimulus aside for a second, because that's in a separate category.
I'd like to add two things to that very quickly, if I may.
Sure.
Number one, he's our first African-American president. That in and of itself is massively symbolic.
Yeah.
And number two, he has not been a hysteric, right?
That's right.
I mean, he has, even in the face of the most insane opposition, people shouting at him from the peanut gallery in Congress,
Yes.
Naked racism, the birther attacks, everything else. Regardless of what you think of his policy, I think he's been a great president.
In that sense, absolutely. I mean, he's an admirable man.
Yes.
I mean, to this day, even though I disagree with him on so many things, and I pick fault in the things that he's done, as a human, you can't help but admire him. I mean, he's a
Well, and I think as a president, particularly in international relations, although we can kind of separate, Syria is a whole other conversation.
You wanted to talk about complexity,
yeah.
And so you think of his two great achievements, Dodd-Frank and Obamacare, and I was looking at these. What distinguishes them, and what is similar about these things? And that's exactly the answer. They're both massively complex, and it wasn't necessary. They're massively complex pieces of legislation with, thousands of moving parts. Dodd-Frank is 20,000 pages long because they keep adding, they keep writing it. It's not done yet. They're working on all of the different rules and the different loopholes and the exceptions and all this. It goes on and on and on and on. There's a kind of a tragic story it was a front page story in the New York Times just a little while ago about President Obama making a personal appeal to the regulators charged with finishing up Dodd-Frank, where he implored them to finish it before he leaves office. This is how many years later here? Oh. Yeah, I mean, that's tragic.
Whereas it could have been just a simple, like 5-page piece of legislation that says, as Glass-Steagall did, investment banks are investment banks.
Even easier. They overturned the deregulation of banks in 1999. They overturned Graham Leach Bliley. They overturned the Commodity Futures Modernization Act. And just go back to
job done.
Yep. Go back to where we were in the 1970s. Yeah. And of course you take it slowly. You don't do it overnight, but it would have been easy. That would have been very simple.
So
I mean, I'm not. I don't want to sound like a simplicity demagogue here, but you look at Obamacare, and the same thing is true. This is this massively complicated piece of legislation that even they're continually discovering. It's like, we left that out, and then they get in trouble for it because a part of it doesn't work, and it has to go to the courts, and it's so complex that even the people that wrote it don't really understand it. And what are they doing with these massively complex pieces of legislation? That's this is the great question of the Obama years. And my answer is that they're trying to have it both ways. They want to get health care for the poor, and at the same time not hurt the insurance companies, not hurt big pharma, not hurt the powers that be. And the same with Dodd-Frank. They want to protect the existing players, the investment banks, the commercial, everybody. Nobody gets put out of business. Everybody's going to be fine, but at the same time deliver these various protections. So they
to the average person.
Right, to the person that borrows money or gets a mortgage or has a bank account or whatever. So they're trying to have it both ways.
Now, those are both programs that benefit the bottom 90%, not just the top 10%.
Yeah, in some ways. But the benefits of Obamacare are complicated. Yes, a lot of people have benefited, and the same with Dodd-Frank. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is a great thing. Remember, this is Elizabeth Warren's famous brainchild, and I'm glad that exists. And the Republicans are going to do everything they can to try to get rid of it. I mean, they have done everything they can.
It.
Yeah, and if they get into the White House, they'll do that immediately. It'll be gone like that.
Right.
But yeah, so overall, these are but complexity. This love of complexity. This is very typical of the professional approach to the world. To see a virtue in complexity itself.
It's sort of a Silicon Valley approach to governing.
Yeah, but you look at their relationship with Wall Street, at the Obama people's relationship with Wall Street, and they look at these complicated financial instruments. What 10 years ago we used to call, sorry, what's the word? We would call it. Financial innovation. They love innovation. This is one of the great words. And 10 years ago, they used to talk about it that way. Credit default swaps. Nothing wrong with that. That's financial innovation.
Right.
They're,
brand new products.
Yes, they're bringing risk down to nothing. They're plucking wealth from thin air. It's this glorious thing, And they look at
that wasn't the Democrats selling that. That was an entire industry selling.
No, that's right. But this is an industry that is. Wall Street, that's one of the, investment banking, that's one of the contested, sort of the battlegrounds of contestation in our modern politics.
Between Democrats
and Republicans.
They're supporting both sides.
But you go back to before Bill Clinton, and Wall Street hated Democrats, and vice versa. They hated each other.
Right.
And Bill Clinton decided, no, we're going to reverse that. We're going to do all these incredible favors for Wall Street, and we're going to make this. We're going to bid for their loyalty. And he did things like of course, the many deregulations, reappointing Alan Greenspan. They bailed out the Mexican, particular class of Mexican bonds that were very popular with Wall Street. They bailed out a hedge fund. Nobody remembers this anymore. It was one of the first of the too big to fail. A hedge fund. Wow. They got a hedge fund off the hook in the Clinton years, and he bid for Wall Street's affection, and very successfully. Barack Obama was the first Democrat to outraise his Republican opponent with the financial industry, particularly with Wall Street.
Right.
First time that had ever happened.
Do you think this is, my sense of it, even reading your book, my sense of it was that this was all done with the best of intentions, all done with the belief of, hey, it's a new era, it's a new day, it's the 21st century, it's a new time, and getting ready for the 21st century. President Clinton talking about a bridge to the 21st century.
Yes.
In fact, it was one of his favorite phrases.
Yeah, I saw him say that with my own eyes, by the way. I was at the Democratic Convention in '96, and I was up there in the gallery peering over the edge, and I could see him doing it, his gesture.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. And but it seems like it hasn't always worked for the average working person. And I think that you're seeing that in the Sanders/Trump phenomena, this populism. And I'm hearing Hillary Clinton changing her rhetoric. The DNC just...
She certainly has changed her
Keith
rhetoric.
Ellison is now going to help, and Cornel West are going to help write the Democratic platform.
My Cornel West?
Your Cornel West.
I can't believe that. That's fantastic.
And Bill McKibben.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Because the DNC just said, okay, Bernie, you can put 5 people on the committee.
Oh, fantastic.
And Hillary can put 6 on. And
that's who he put on.
That's who he's put on so far.
Wow.
And I'm looking at and as well as James Zogby, who is the founder of the Arab American Institute and is pro-Palestinian. Or not anti-Israeli.
That's funny they didn't put Nader on there.
Well, Nader's got he's got this great convention in town going on today too.
Yeah. Oh, that's great though. That's wonderful. I think so highly of Cornel West because there's that music again.
Yeah.
I did an interview with Cornel West a few years ago that was I thought it was so wonderful. I just love talking to that guy.
Yeah. He is. He's a genius. I mean, there's just no way around it. Some people behave like geniuses but aren't. This guy is. Anyway, we'll be right. Speaking of geniuses, I've got one sitting right next to me, Thomas Frank. Check out his book.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
His book is Listen Liberal. We'll be right back. Welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. Thomas Frank in the studio with me. I want to make it just very clear. I'm not trying to have this conversation in a way that is taking a position in the Democratic primary. Number one.
Oh, I am.
You are.
Okay. No, okay, not. No, that's. I'm sorry. I'm going too far. What
I'm finding is that I'm trying not to to blow more air into that fire.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, that's right. No, I wrote this. I wrote the book as it's a historical book. It's not a partisan book. I don't mention Bernie Sanders in the book. It's not a campaign brief for Bernie Sanders. Nothing like that. I mean, I wrote it. This is a book that is designed to be read 10 years from now.
It's a history of how the Democratic Party got to where they are now.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that where they are right now is on the edge of some really significant retransformation. And I'm curious.
I don't think that's going to happen. No, I don't. I mean, it is true that that in these primary contests here in 2016, that you had the Bernie Sanders candidacy. It's still going on, and he has pushed Hillary Clinton to the left on a whole number of issues. I don't think that's permanent. I don't think it's. I think that when you talk about, we were talking earlier about who Wall Street donates to, the Democrat or the Republican. This time around, I think Hillary will easily beat Donald Trump in that particular fundraising category. I think that
even though he's good buddies with half these Wall Street
you watch what happens. And I also think that Hillary is essentially running as a candidate of complacency, if not conservatism. She's the only one in all of those people running, a year ago. She's the only one that's basically status quo. Nothing changes. This is the third term of the Obama administration. Basically.
Well, and she said that. She wants to protect the legacy of the Obama administration. And if you think that this guy's done a pretty good job, I mean, can you imagine if we had John McCain or Mitt Romney as president? The kind of damage that would have been done to this country.
Yeah, I mean, I can, of course. I've been a critic of conservatism for a long time, but there's one issue where Romney was better than Obama. Gun control. Nobody remembers this. Yeah. Obama the 2012 election was before Sandy Hook, and he'd said almost nothing about gun control, but Romney, as governor of Massachusetts, had signed some gun control measures.
That's interesting.
I mean,
I would argue
they didn't make a point of it, and it was never mentioned. It was never mentioned in the race.
Yeah, well, I remember going to CPAC back, 8 years ago, I guess, when he was first starting to run, and they were having people dressed up like dolphins, and they were talking about that, and with flippers, he's the flip flopper.
Oh, right, I get it. Okay, yeah.
Flipper. But in any case, I was going someplace with that, but
it doesn't really matter. The question that we were getting around to is anything going to change within the Democratic Party, and I think the answer is no. I don't see anything
I hope
changing.
You're wrong. I think it's already changed, and let me say, the change may not be this week, this month, or next year. I think that what we're looking at right now is an entire generation that has reawakened to the pre-1980 values.
Oh, that is certainly true. That is happening. That's happening. I'm very excited. I'm very excited about that. Well, it just got stopped, Tom.
How?
Bernie lost.
Well,
politics is a...
That doesn't mean that the movement... I mean, that's a moment, not a movement.
Of course, I understand that. Next comes the bigger task of building a movement out of this. But this is... Politics is a matter, it's a game of force, it's a game of strategy, it's a game of cornering. What we have is a monopoly system, and it's very easy to lock certain viewpoints out, even if those are majority viewpoints. And by the way, we're going to get into so many areas here of, well, I don't know if we're going to have time to get into so many areas of guilty democratic conscience. NAFTA, for example, the public has been against this ever since it was signed.
Well, ever since it was proposed, Ross Perot got 20% of the vote.
Yes, that's right. And but they've never got their day. They've never got their day. And now finally, all the remaining candidates say they're against it. And you watch what happens, Tom. Yeah. You think they're really going to renegotiate NAFTA? Do you think Hillary Clinton's really going to renegotiate her husband's great achievement?
I think it's entirely possible.
You're more hopeful than me.
I've been accused of being an eternal optimist, and it's probably true.
But that's healthy. That's a good thing to be.
I'm just seeing. I don't think that Hillary Clinton is changing her positions on NAFTA and on Keystone and things like that just out of political expedience, just because of Bernie Sanders. I think, yes, out of political expedience, but that's what you want in your politicians. You want them listening to the people.
Yes,
the word leader doesn't exist in the Constitution. It's a representative.
Yeah, that's right, and that would be nice. But I think that at the end of the day, that's not where these people's hearts are at. That's not who they are. That's not what they care about.
Well, you could have cared about FDR in 1932.
Oh my God, Tom! How many times do we? I mean, look at who these people are. Look at the machinery that they come out of. You know? Franklin Roosevelt was a different creature.
FDR was a machine politician in the most
So you're saying it could happen.
Yes, I think that I do, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think that Hillary Clinton knows how to use power.
Yeah. I'll say I do like her better than her husband,
and therefore I do too, massively. And I think she's far more progressive than her husband, and she knows how to use power. And President Obama, at least in his first couple of years, didn't, and that was when he had the opportunity.
That's right. And that's important. That's important when you go back to.
He knew how to take names and kick ass.
Yeah.
And that's why I think she has the potential to be something really great. It's just a matter of the times, though. I don't believe in this great man theory of history that somebody comes along and they know and it's going to be their way or the highway.
Yeah, it's a combination of things, of course. The great man theory of history, that's interesting. I mean, it's an idea that you come across again and again and again, especially in the sort of cult of innovation that I described in Listen Liberal, where it's always about the great genius, who comes up with the Steve Jobs or whatever.
Who
comes
stole
up with
the operating system, it's called the Star operating system.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to set you off there. Yeah. But this is a whole part of this modern day the sort of political economy that we live in, is the cult of the innovator.
Yeah.
It's both in politics and in the economy. Okay, can I just say the last thing here, that the culture of professionalism suffuses this wing of the party. By the way, David Brooks, of all people, had a good column about that very subject in this morning's New York Times.
I'll have to look for it. I usually find David Brooks indigestible.
Yeah.
Thomas Frank, his book, Listen, Liberal. Check it out. Thomas, thank you.
Anytime.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.